What's something people think saves them money, but actually loses them money? Before we start, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos. I wish you a pleasant viewing experience. Story 1. If you're an art crafts person, seeing something you want and thinking, I can just make it myself and it'll cost me a lot less. That is the devil whispering sweet lies directly into the tender ear of your hubris. If you don't already have nearly all of the necessary supplies on hand, it will cost you more to make it yourself. Story 2. Sales. Oddly enough, I read something like something at 30 off seems like a good deal until you realize you were convinced to spend 70 more than you normally plan. Small thing, but it made me more aware of my spending habits and JFC how much FOMO engineering there is. Story 3. Buy now, pay later debt for anything that isn't an appreciating asset or generates cash flow, like a burrito, refrigerator, phone, wedding, etc. I interned at a BNPL firm, and I'm telling you all from firsthand experience, it's a scam. Story 4. Buying the cheaper and smaller packages of food at the grocery store. The price for the amount of food is often a lot higher. It's better to buy the larger sized ones and then maybe freeze some of it. Story 5. As a tax accountant, not maintaining a separate bank account for your small business. The fees for the account will end up being less every year than what you get charged for the additional work of trying to disaggregate your personal expenses from your business expenses in the bank statements alone. Story 6. My in-laws would drive all over town chasing grocery sales. Milk is cheaper here, chicken on sale here, bread is buy one, get one at this store, etc. Even if you don't make additional impulse buys at each store, who the fudge wants to waste that much time, energy, gas, and mental bandwidth on groceries? It was like a weird obsession and was exhausting just hearing about. Like pick a fudge store and be done with it. Change it weekly if you want to, but FFS going to 5 different stores to meal plan is bonkers. Story 7. Over the course of his life, my father has changed his home heating system numerous times. He went from electric board to electric furnace, then wood stove, then oil stove, back to wood stove, and now propane stove. Every single time he tried to convince me he was saving $20 on his energy bill. It cost him so much money that he will never save enough to pay for just one system. Story 8. The buy one get one half off or with discount type of deals. Anything that incentivizes you to buy more by tacking it on as a bonus if you get it. If you're buying in bulk or such intentionally, then it's a good deal. But if you just came in for one box of, let's say, cookies for $5 and it had one of these deals, so you buy a second box too because it's discounted and says if you buy 2, it'll cost $8 as opposed to $10. So you get it thinking you're saving money. Instead, what you just spent was 3 more than you had to on a second box you didn't even come in for. And it repeats throughout the whole store. It's everywhere, especially in food. The flashy colored tickets, the bold letters, emphasis on how much you save, all to bait people to buy more things than they actually need. Though it depends on what your actual goals and needs are. It might genuinely save you some and be good, but you could also be getting ripped off. Story 9. A lot of price matching and shopping around ends up wasting more than it's worth. Also, my dad read that you save gas money going slower, so he once added an hour to his commute so that he could save gas. Even aside from the fact that that hour of his life was worth more than the 3 cents it saved him, he had to take a longer route to do it because you can't go under 60 on the interstate. Story 10. Asking for pet health advice on fucking Reddit. Shudders, I mean. Them dying because you asked Reddit instead of taking them to a vet will spare you from all future vet bills. So I guess it does technically save you money. Story 11. Not reading labels on the shelf in stores or reading the information on the labels. It tells you what you're paying by volume. The bigger box or bottle is not necessarily the cheapest, and you can compare brands this way too. Also, the 2 for sales B1G1 sales. A little math and time is worth it in savings. Story 12. Feeding your pets cheap jerk pet food. Sure, your cat, for example, may happily eat that 18-15 rupee bag of corn-based kibble every day, but you're going to be paying a lot more in vet bills when their kidneys fail because of it than you would have paid over time for higher quality food. Story 13. Having a big gas tank. I hear people talk about I get 400 miles on a tank and only fill every 2 weeks, but they get 15 mpg. Saves you time but not money versus an efficient car that has better fuel economy. Story 14. Cutting corners on professional equipment. A few years back, I got a made-in-China arm for my microphone on Amazon. Cost about 14th what the German original did. About 9 months later, one night it snapped, fell on my computer, and threw everything to the floor. A 100 item nearly cost me $4,000. I then bought the expensive German model and haven't had any problems. Story 15. Saving money, or more accurately, spending less on certain things. Let me elaborate. Actually, let Terry Pratchett elaborate. The reason that the rich were so rich, Vimes reasoned, was because they managed to spend less money. Take Boots, for example. He earned $38 a month plus allowances. A really good pair of leather boots cost $50, but an affordable pair of boots, which were sort of okay for a season or two and then leaked like hell when the cardboard gave out, cost about $10. Those were the kind of boots Vimes always bought and wore until the soles were so thin that he could tell where he was in Ankh-Morpork on a foggy night by the feel of the cobbles. But the thing was that good boots lasted for years and years. A man who could afford $50 had a pair of boots that'd still be keeping his feet dry in 10 years' time, while the poor man who could only afford cheap boots would have spent $100 on boots in the same time and would still have wet feet. Story 16. Do you want to save money by purchasing fast, cheap fashion? A huge error. I used to do it, but I was always changing my clothes. Purchasing high-quality items may seem costly up front, but it prevents me from overspending and frustration. Real savings involves long-term planning rather Band-Aid solutions. Story 17. The dollar store. You're paying way more per item, but I understand their utility is to help get by when you can't afford a full item or to buy in bulk. If you're not paycheck to paycheck, though, it doesn't make sense to shop there. Story 18. Buying in bulk. People think they're saving money by purchasing large quantities at a discount, but if the items expire or go unused at all, it ends up wasting money. Bulk buying only saves money when it's for items you consistently use, know exactly how long it takes to consume it, and that can be stored properly. Story 19. Having any kind of car payment and getting a new car every year. I can understand if someone is really struggling and is living paycheck to paycheck, but I have always bought my cars in full and keep them until they fall apart. I truly don't understand why anyone would do anything other than that. It's the biggest waste of money otherwise. Story 20. The dollar store. Take diapers, for example. Yeah, the pack is cheaper, but when I looked at my unit price, it was $0.39 a diaper, compared to the same brand at Walmart for $28 a diaper. Most dollar store name brands are this way. Story 21. I can't believe that it's not the top comment. Not buying insurance, pet car, home, income, travel. I never thought I'd have an accident, said every uninsured person ever after an accident. Oh, so the rest of us buy insurance because we know for sure we're going to have an accident, right? Story 22. Savings accounts. The interest rates are laughable. Unless you have a lot of money in a high-yield savings account, you're not getting any significant interest. Eating out. By the time you get done ordering the food, the drinks, the apps, the main course, tip, gratuity, tax, you're losing money big time. And even more so if you stay home and use DoorDash. You're better off cooking your own dinner or even nuking a Hot Pocket in your microwave. Story 23. Buying cheap tools or appliances that break in 6 months, then doing it again like it's not slowly draining your wallet. Sometimes saving money means spending a little more once instead of bleeding cash forever. Story 24. Monthly payments. I understand not everyone can come up with a large amount at once, but things like example braces, the monthly payment was cheap. But in the end, it turned out to be significantly more than paying it up front. I was the dumb one. Once I turned 18, all these places would say monthly payment options. I got excited then. In the end, I was like, wait a darn minute. Haha. Story 25. Spending money on cheap shoes, particularly cheap work shoes. I used to tell my colleges to take work out of it. Do you want to feel miserable and tired because you wore cheap shoes all day? Or do you want to feel like you can enjoy your time off because your feet feel great? Story 26. Buying more than they need of anything because it's cheaper per ounce. Most of the time, the excess is thrown out. You should buy smaller sizes first and only buy a bigger size if you finish the small in a reasonable amount of time. Applies to most consumables. Food, cleaning supplies, perfume, makeup, soaps, etc. Story 27. Booking a 6 a.m. flight because it's cheap, then needing to wake up super early and call an Uber to the airport. The flight might seem $30 cheaper, but it probably costs more to get to the airport at that time. Story 28. Automatically buying everything online through Amazon. Look around, it's frequently not the cheapest. It's also not the most reliable. It may not get delivered the fastest either. But people believe they are buying it cheaper on Amazon without even looking. Amazon have won. Story 29. Just about anything you buy on Black Friday. Sure, the prices are slashed, but you are running into a shop into impulse. Buy anything you see without a second thought on whether you need it. Just because it looks cheap, that buying the thing later, if you do want it. Story 30. Buying the size of the product that is the cheapest in absolute terms, not in relative terms. The tiny dollar store bottle of detergent is more expensive than the big bottle of the same brand you get in other stores. A package with 2 rolls of toilet paper costs more per roll than a big package of the same brand and quality. It makes some sense to buy small packages for things that easily spoil or that you don't need often, but for most stuff that is not perishable and that you use regularly, buying in bulk is cheapest. Buying small packages because you can't afford the big ones actually makes you poorer and gets you deeper in debt. Story 31. Driving around to different stores to save money on grocery items? You're going to drive 15 minutes to another store because they cantaloupe for one-off? The cost of gas and your time means you're losing money. Story 32. Perusing the aisles of any store. Use an app to prepay for only what you need, then do a curbside pickup to avoid impulse shopping. I haven't entered a grocery store in 9 years. Cut my food bill in half? Story 33. Health. Don't save money on it. It will cost you a lot more later on. Tons of issues can be solved by a simple run walk. Good shoes goes back to health. Air quality at home. A good purifier is not that expensive and makes a huge difference. Good pre-made food. If you have time, make it at home. Most of the time, it will be half the price of pre-made, sometimes 14, way healthier and way tastier. Story 34. As far as I know, the average maintenance of a car is $100 per month with a car over $100K. Assuming you are not doing the maintenance, if you have not had any problems in the last 6 months, doesn't change the average. If you've gone sailing through a year with no problems, have money saved up for a $1,200 repair. And that's not to say anything about problems you ignore. A $100 fix now can easily turn into a $1,000 fix later. Story 35. Yeah, I've got a bicycle and not a car, big city life. But I shelled out $700 for it, and I make sure to get it in for a proper tune-up every year. I had to be talked into buying the expensive hybrid bike by a friend. Was really hesitant, but fudge was it worth it. Had the bike a good decade so far, and with regular maintenance, it still rides as smooth as the day I bought it. No reason to believe it won't last another 20 the same way. Story 36. This applies to physical health too. Not going to the dentist for regular cleanings, not getting a checkup, etc. The maintenance visits can help you catch stuff before it gets really bad or prevent it entirely. Story 37. It really sucks when you know what needs to be done and you want to, but you simply can't afford it. My car is nearing 300K miles. I do all the maintenance on it, preventative and corrective. Unfortunately, after about 250,000 miles, any car is going to start showing signs of wear, and multiple things started going wrong, braking or what have you, right as I'm trying to buy a house. No ACBC, the clutch went out, driver's side window, switch broke, shifter button broke and fell out, radio suddenly started turning volume down on its own, rendering it useless for now, oil leak from the engine somewhere that I've yet to locate exactly that is now worsening. I can fix all of that with my own 2 hands if I had the money. Story 38. I have a couple of perfect little rice bowls that I got for $3 each at a Chinese grocery store. I wanted more, but in different colors, and after a couple $1,000s and 7 years of pottery classes, I have them. Answer. Found out the Chinese grocer was into pottery after they saw Ghost. Worked out which pottery studio they went to, the Chug and Squeeze on 6th. Paid an exorbitant fee to break lease and moved to the apartment above it. Spend years living there, hoping to bump into them. Then after 4 years, accidentally bump into them on Vinovis Day. Say, oh, you go here? I've never tried before. Would you mind showing me? Even though you've spent the last 3 years going to the Chug and Squeeze on Belmont on Rose Ashtray Day and are very proficient. Wow them with your pottery skills. Ask them out while they're stunned. Have a torrid 3-year affair, which causes a rift between them and their wife leading to a divorce. You start being an open couple. Then for the 3rd anniversary, you ask them to make some of those lovely little rice bowls they used to stock, as it reminds you of how you met. Get the bowls and immediately dump them. Now your plan is complete, but still there's an ember of the relationship that will never truly go away. Been there so many times. I get it, man. Story 39. I sew, and today I saw something on Instagram that was like, why buy it for $100 when I can spend $2,000 to make it myself? Too real low-L. If nothing else, seeing the price of fabric made me appreciate why clothes that aren't made in a sweatshop are more expensive. Story 40. I can either pay for a thing or invest in tools to make a thing that I will have forever and use my time that is mine for free. I spent $600 on a solid oak table that comparable places wanted $3,000. Most furniture is particle board laminated garbage. Most of my furniture is solid wood. And now I have the sanders, routers, clamps, saws, joinery jigs, etc. all as well for well under what it would have cost otherwise for fine furniture. My 3D printers paid for themselves a few times over too. Answer: I think the key difference is whether you find value in the process or just want the end result. If you love the process, then it's worth the investment in time and tools, etc. I think a lot of craft supplies get purchased and abandoned because someone saw something cool and figured if that random on Instagram made that cool thing, they surely can too, without realizing just how much time, material, and failed attempts it took to get to that point. But on the other hand, I think the worst that can come of trying a new hobby is learning why artisan-made goods cost so much. Story 41. My mom always does this, and it's always annoyed me. If you enjoy making things as a hobby, that's fine, and by all means. Just don't claim it will save you money and then try to convince everyone around you to do the same. Story 42. My dad left a gas station to drive across town to get 3 cents off. The second station had raised prices, so he drove back. Original station had raised prices in the 1.5 hours it had taken to drive across town and back, so 2 cross-town trips to pay 15 cents extra SMDH lols. Story 43. Decades ago, I got into an argument with my mom over this. Back when gas prices shot above 1.75, and I was driving a large SUV with a 44-gallon gas tank. She was adamant that I should put the effort into finding the cheapest possible gas around town. If I got a 0.10 discount at every fill-up, it would have been less than 90 over the course of a year. I showed her the numbers, accounting for the expense of every extra foot traveled, but she would have none of it. I was being wasteful by not driving 30 miles out of my way to save a penny per gallon. Meanwhile, I saved hundreds of dollars on gas each year by not going to visit her. Story 44. My MIL lives near a Costco, so she uses it all the time. She will then tell my wife about the prices and how they are, quoting 10-gallon cheaper. She thinks we should get in the car and drive through traffic for 10 miles to save 1.50, which we probably spend in gas to get to Costco. Story 45. When I get down to 14 of a tank or so, I start keeping my eyes open for the cheapest gas. Along the road I usually drive while I am running errands, I will typically hit the cheapest station on the way back home. Gas Buddy used to be great for this, but it isn't updated like it was several years ago. Story 46. Where I live, the differences in prices can be as high as around 10, meaning the savings can be over $5. I won't drive for half an hour across town, but I will drive an extra 5 or 10 minutes when I have nothing else to do. Story 47. The worst part about that is it's getting increasingly difficult to simply find a reputable source for the stuff. Search online and everything directs you to Amazon. Yet Amazon is well known for having and freely selling counterfeit products. I'm always hesitant to buy anything good from there because I've been burned plenty of times. So I look up the websites for specific products, and it links to Amazon. So I look locally. The closest store that has it is 150 miles away. Answer: 100. And it's also hard to find a reputable source for researching what is or isn't a quality product. Especially with affiliate marketing being so popular, people will write a glowing review about anything so long as they can add an affiliate link. And anyone and everyone can write reviews, even if they're just a random person who has no real insight into whether it's a good product or not. But a company offered them $5,000 to use their product for a week and then make a video saying, "This is the best product ever." I genuinely have no idea where to get unbiased reviews anymore. Story 48. Except there's a fallacy that expensive means better quality, which really hasn't been the case since the 50s. Companies create poor quality items and just build a brand that conveys high quality so that people will rationalize spending more for it. A good example is Beats headphones. They're mid-quality, not terrible, but also not great. They increase the bass to fake the appearance of high-quality headphones on first listen. They use celeb endorsements to rationalize the 50 price tag for a 15 product. Story 49. Agreed. Learned my lesson when I bought new glasses with the cheapest frames available at my local optometrist. They kept breaking all the time. Sometimes I could fix it myself, but the second or third time I had to take them into the optometrist office to get them fixed, I made an appointment to get new glasses. Story 50. I used to think Walmart brand clothes were shoot like back in the day. Now they actually are half decent. They have some decent cheap shoes I like. I can afford to replace them once a year, unlike Nikes. I have to wait a year and a half to find something on sale. Story 51. Depends on the stuff. In most cases, cheap stuff does save you money. Only in specific cases is it worse. Let's come up with examples. Watches. Casio F91W. It's 10, it lasts forever. It breaks more often than a normal watch. But if the normal watch costs $500 and you use it from 2080, All you need to do is have the Casio last on average 1 year to save money. If your alternative watch costs $100, it ain't lasting till you're 80, but still the Casio beats it. Washing machine. The 500 machine has lower quality cogs, but it's entirely mechanical. That means you can go in and fix it. If you pay $1,000, the motor might last twice as long, but if the electronics break, you need a new control board, which is no longer made, and you need to solder at 20 times the cost of a blown motor in the cheap machine. Charcoal. Okay, Kingford is better, but if you can get Walmart brand for half the price, it still lasts just as long. Just maybe doesn't get up to heat as fast or taste as good. Cheap saves money. Computers. Yes, paying more is better up to a point. The cheapest computers are unupgradable. The most expensive ones are as well. You want to build your own to save money in the long run. That's a medium price. Monitors. They have basically the same longevity. Cars. The more money you pay, the more expensive the repairs and maintenance are. Literally. Every single dime you spend is going to cost you more later. Every feature you add is more complex to repair. Lawnmowers, they all last just as long. The higher price will get you more cut width, or a bigger engine, or a better engine maybe. But the lawnmowers are going to die from maintenance neglect long before the quality matters, so cheaper saves money. Laundry detergent. The common claim is that Tide or Gain is super concentrated, so you don't have to use as much. No, they're about the same as even the cheapest shoot. Buying cheaper does save you money, as cheaper stuff gets used to a similar rate. It's not as good, but it gets used at a similar rate. I use only Gain for my work uniform, but my everyday clothes where it doesn't matter if they have oil stains on them, Fudge It, Dollar Store shoot works fine. Headphones. My cheap headphones break every 2 months. They also cost me 26 cents per. If a normal pair of headphones costs 20, I would have to break 80 of my cheap pairs, which is going to take decades. By that point, the normal headphones would also have broken or become lost. Pens. Bic stick pens are indestructible and dirt cheap. Buying any other pen is a waste. Lighters, Scripto, and Bic disposables are extremely reliable, and you would rather lose those than a Zippo which dries out every 5 days. Let's talk about the examples where paying more for the initial product saves money. I buy high-end stuff, or at least middle-of-the-road stuff, not infrequently, but it's almost never a money saver. It's for experience or when you value your time over the cost of the product. More expensive stuff is almost always better in a tangible way, but I don't find that it saves me money at all. Story 52. I had a conversation with the guy who owned the storage unit place when we got one while moving, and he said it's insane. How many people pay him $100, $150 a month for 10, 20 years, and then one day come with a dumpster and just clean it all out because they have been storing junk. Story 53. Even having a storage room when living in an apt or condo is a major waste half the time. I always ended up junking half the crap that was in there in the long run. Haven't had a storage room in 7 years. Really makes you think about what you're keeping and to take inventory when you need to store something legit. I'm glad my current building charges for storage lockers rooms. Prevents me from hoarding junk. Answer. I rented a storage room in my last apartment building because my apartment was a large studio with literally no closets. Unless I wanted my Christmas tree, luggage, etc. visible at all times, I had to pay to put it in the small walk-in closet-sized storage room. So it was worth the $50 a month in that sense. But I think that was an outlier situation. And even then, I kind of felt like the building should have given it to me for free, considering mine was the only apartment in the building without any closets. Story 54. I have the opposite experience with a storage unit. I had to get one when moving in with my partner. We went out of town for a week, and the day we left, I got a call that there was a fire in the place. Inside, temp controlled, yada yada. I couldn't deal with it at that time. We weren't canceling our trip. So we waited a week to get there and take care of things. I had a beautiful leather West Elm couch in there that was stood on end to save space. Water soaked it and created a line on it, essentially ruining it. It could be refinished, but that's not what the insurance was for. I also had a vinyl record collection with some rare pieces that got a little wet and some old snowboarding gear. Lucky for me, when they offered me insurance for an extra $15 a month, I said yes. The amount of money I got back was actually more than what I paid for the couch because it was based on replacement cost, and I still had the couch and sold that for $500. The record sleeves that got wet doesn't bother me. They're for using. I did have to throw out the snowboarding gear, but it was also old stuff that it doesn't bother me. Moral of the story, get the insurance when you're going to need to rely on other people to not suck. The fire in the storage unit happened because people were living in their unit. Story 55. Many years ago, I got my first credit card. I used to pay it off religiously. I'll never forget having a conversation on the deck with my father when he told me the only way to build credit is to carry a balance. It sent me down a dangerous spiral and was some of the worst financial and life advice I ever received. I have been chasing that advice and burdened half of my adult life. I paid off one of my cards yesterday, and it has never felt better. Story 56. OMG, I got so frustrated trying to explain this to one of our CNAs at work. She literally didn't work OT at her 25-hour job because she thought she made more money going and working at a gas station for 15 hour. I even tried to write it out for her, and she just got pissed and said, I don't care that you used to be a financial advisor. I know what my checks look like. At that point, I just gave up and let her do her thing. Story 57. That's not a valid reason in terms of taxes, but it's unfortunately 100 valid in terms of government welfare programs. The fact that they're all or nothing means that instead of them being a safety net, they're a boot keeping people down. If you're better off making 20K than 50K, why would you ever work for 40K? Answer, in general, the people who are concerned about making too much money and getting pushed into a higher tax bracket aren't people on Medicare or other benefits. Those people would be concerned with losing benefits that are means tested, not concerned about their tax bracket. To be clear, the current system setup is garbage. If benefits are means tested, they should phase out instead of going to zero. Plus lots of other problems with how the current American system works that I won't get into now. Story 58. The only time this is true is if they're making such a low wage that they qualify for government assistance programs, and that raise puts them over the threshold. All the other instances is the failure of the education system and poor parenting for not imparting basic tax knowledge in the tier system. Story 59. This is kind of true if you're only looking at the income tax brackets, but there are some income-limited credits that have hard cliffs instead of being gradually phased out. In those cases, it might be preferable to stay under a certain income threshold. Story 60. I'm astonished how many people you would think are intelligent believe this. SMH, also the people that are against tax increases on the wealthy because obviously it's talking about them, even though they make 5 figures. Story 61. Yes, as long as the dentist is honest. About 7 years ago, I went to the dentist on a routine checkup and was presented with a bleak doomsday scenario where a root canal was needed. Mind you, I didn't even have a toothache, yet I was going to need thousands of dollars worth of dental surgery. I thought about it and decided to roll the dice and ignore him. I didn't go to the dentist again until last year. The dentist told me my roots are strong and gums look fantastic, not even a cavity. So either my old dentist was full of it or my teeth magically healed themselves. Answer, I had one tell me I had 15 cavities, 4 loose teeth, needed my last wisdom tooth pulled, and had gum disease. I hadn't seen a dentist in 15 years and was horrified. I didn't feel any cavities, I didn't see any cavities, and I had never felt a loose tooth, but she insisted that was what she found. I remember her looking into my mouth and giving the tooth number followed by the word caries to the assistant in this super cheerful voice over and over again. The office printed me an estimate for the work I needed. It was a massive expense, and I spent years believing my teeth were literally rotting out of my head. But I left that job shortly after and never had dental coverage again. I was 30. At 35, I saved enough money to start working with a dental school to try and get my mouth in order. No cavities, no loose teeth, no need to remove the last wisdom tooth, beginning stages of gum disease. But I had, according to the dentist supervising the dental students, clearly brushed my teeth so hard that I had utterly destroyed them and forced plaque deep into the sockets. She said they were some of the most perfectly kept teeth she had ever seen, but I would need surgery they did not offer to replace my gums and serious scraping to get the plaque out. She said she assumed I had brushed that hard in an attempt to save as many teeth as I could while being uninsured for so long. She was correct, but I did not tell her it was because I had been told my teeth were literally rotting out of my skull by a different dentist 5 years earlier. They were going to cap or pull half my fudge teeth, Jesus. My front lower gums are utterly fudge though. Story 62. I feel like nobody even heard me today at work when I said that I use Credit Karma. And it has been free for quite a while. This was in the middle of us talking about how much they dislike paying for doing their taxes. There's some weird marketing stuff going on. Story 63. Same goes for people who pay any amount for filing an EZ form, or that use the little desk inside Walmart. I made my kids use the various free platforms so they could see how easy it is. I don't know if it's sunk in or not, but I sure tried. This goes double for anyone that pays to get their refund faster, like i.e., get a loan. I know money can be tight, but look at how much it is costing you. Basic financial literacy is too rare. Story 64. The tax situation in the US seems really weird to me. In the UK, most people don't need to do anything. Tax is deducted when they are paid, and there's nothing to work out or any yearly forms to fill in. For those who do need to file a tax return, it's a fairly simple online form. Mine takes me about 20 minutes to do, and that's being slow and careful about it. Almost all of it is filled out already and just needs to be checked. The only people who tend to have anything complicated to do are those who are self-employed or have complex investments. Story 65. I worked with someone like this. He would go buy shoot that was on sale because he might need it in the future. Like a bunch of tools and shoot, he would frequent estate sales and pawn shops too. Buy piles of junk and then claim at the end of it how much money he saved. I'm like, no, you actually spent $500 instead of saving $250. Story 66. An hour ago, I did this with a pair of shoes. I do need new shoes. It just usually takes me 3 years to buckle down and force myself to actually pick a pair. I have very specific taste. This was only year 2, so I'm ahead of the game. I would not have bought 120 shoes this week while I'm on vacation if they weren't marked down to 70. Story 67. I'd say subscriptions in general, when purchasing was an option. People like the idea of paying less up front, but you lose ownership of what you're paying for, and the ongoing cost adds up. First, it was with software. I think Office and Adobe were the first to push, and now it's with features in cars. Story 68. I'll play devil's advocate on this. I bartend 2 jobs, and good footwear is a must. I have spent lots on expensive shoes insoles, trying to find the right pair to eliminate foot-leg back pain. The best ones I get are $35 at Walmart, black non-slips with the 90s, 2000s air pockets on the bottoms. They last like 4 or 5 months walking 15,000, 20,000 steps a day. For skateboarding and running, I agree, however. Those are the only kind of shoes I wear, though, so can't speak to other professions or styles. Story 69. I only buy shoes from local skate shops, and those usually run me around $150 and last around 7 years. Something I should mention is that I mostly skate inline and mostly cruise on my board, but those soles last so long. Story 70. Best financial lesson is to understand how you make your money work for you. For example, if you have money saved for a car and have an option to pay it off all at once or finance it, consider whether your investment earns more than the interest you'd have to pay. That keeps your money working for you as long as possible. Answer. This is an interesting one that I learned after the fact. I paid off all my student loans, 6 interest, and was very proud of myself. But I drained my bank account to near zero. Soon after, I took out a loan to expand my business, which ended up being 15 interest. I was so mad at myself. Beyond that, I could have invested the money to at least negate the 6 interest charge of the student loans, if not make money on investments. Of course, you should pay off credit card debt, but even then, you can get 0 APR introductory rate for a 5 transfer fee deal, and then you're only paying 5 for the year. But pretty much always, it's better to invest money than to pay off a low-interest mortgage. Story 71. Of course, the government checks if you're entitled to the benefits you receive from them. But yes, once you make over a certain threshold of income, you don't get marketplace benefits anymore. However, if you get health insurance premiums taken from your paycheck, they are pre-tax deductions, so you are technically paying less taxes in a way. Story 72. Come to a better country. No bills at the hospital and no insurance industry to siphon off trillions. Canadians pay less healthcare taxes than Americans, and you'd still need to buy insurance to actually receive healthcare. Plus, outcomes are better outside the U.S. Story 73. Except if you're buying what you need, what you can reasonably use before expiration. My spouse bought a large bottle of barbecue sauce when we use it maybe once a year. Now we've partied too hard fridge space and more is going in the trash. Yellow mustard is something I like to have for when I want it, but I only really need a small jar, so it can be better to buy a smaller size ESP if a space is at a premium. Story 74. I feel really dumb for being 35 years old and only just realizing how well almost all food freezes. I freeze everything now and have leftovers all the time. My favorite discovery is freezing tomato sauce that comes in 28-oz cans. Story 75. Yes, I've gotten into the habit of looking at the unit price, which gives you the value. Usually the larger packages are cheaper per amount, but sometimes they're not. I try to get the lowest unit price. Story 76. My freezer is full because we do this, but the problem is that my wife forgets what we have in the freezer and restocks the fridge anyway. Sometimes it's better to just buy what you need and not have the waste. I acknowledge this is poor organization on her part, but she's a sucker for the cheap bulk buys. Story 77. If you're only going to use the smaller amount in the time it will take to go bad, buy the smaller amount. It's never a good deal to pay less per ounce, more per item, when you're throwing all those cheaper ounces away. Story 78. Always check the price per weight unit the shop uses. Where I am in Belgium, it's X on X in X kg, which can reveal that some things are just not worth buying. Example, a Kinder Joy egg is like 30 per kilogram, which is way too steep of a price when you break it down to the price of just one egg, especially since it's 50 plastic that you'll throw away anyway. Story 79. I mentally grapple with the thought of paying for our Walmart subscription and having to tip the delivery driver each time. But I can't stand the amount of mental and physical energy it takes to go grocery shopping. Plus, I make way less impulse purchases because I'm not browsing through a physical store. I can only purchase the items I can think of, so I can't buy it if I don't know it exists. Story 80. Savings accounts are holding accounts for quick access to liquid assets and short-term saving. Like, I'll need this within a year short-term. Once upon a time, banks offered actual savings interest, but not anymore. Story 81. Sometimes, maybe once a year, I buy a lottery ticket. Then I sit on the beach or in a hammock and dream what I'd do with it. That 2 or 3 gave me hours of entertainment, because you don't win if you don't play. Story 82. Ignoring this also wastes money if it's things like toiletries that you know you will use. Buying only one thing at a time when there is a deal for 2, and you use that product regularly, also ends up costing people more money overall and will result in wasting money. Story 83. I get what you're saying. Basically, if you're going to buy that much anyway, might as well save a DE, get the bulk discount. But if you only want or need a little bit, then you'll end up spending more than you planned on. With snacks, it's easy to eat too much because you save per unit of product, but maybe you consumed more than you would have because it's there. You got to know yourself too. But yeah, sometimes you end up buying too much of something that you don't need that much of. Story 84. Things like cookies I by nature only buy on sale. You'll spend full price on produce if I need it, but snacks? I stock up on sales and eat them until the next sale. Those 3 packages of cookies are lasting me until the next good sale I care about at a minimum, because there's no fudge way in paying retail or even the more minor sale prices. Story 85. Fast food is becoming just as expensive as restaurant food. When I was last in England to visit my family, I went to a Wendy's that worked out at being 12 quid for the meal. It was shoot. The next day I went to a pub chain, Green King or Marston's, one of those types, and me and my dad had a lovely pie mash, each with peas, 2 for 13 quid. I can't believe people still go to the fast food shite. The only thing I suppose it is good for is something like a bag of fries to keep you going until dinner time. Story 86. I love having a large gas tank. My pickup will go about 600 miles between Phillips. So nice. Not long ago, it was in the shop and I had an economy car as a rental. Filling the teacup of a gas tank was cheap, but good Lord, I had to fill up every time I turned around. Yeah, you are right, it doesn't save money, but it sure is convenient. Story 87. This always makes me feel bad when people have to buy very, very used cars way out of warranty. It's not by choice for them, but it creates such a vicious cycle of having to spend a ton on repairs. People get so trapped in a cycle of poverty for the very reason you mentioned. Story 88. It's not that simple. I wanted to invest in a good pair of jeans because my 50 euros jeans kept getting ripped. Turns out even the more expensive ones are using the same low-quality pseudo-denim fabric. Story 89. So true. I tell young people with car loans to keep making payments to themselves after it is paid off because they will eventually need another car. Paying interest is just adding to the total cost of the car. Story 90. It depends. There are big savings to get at wholesale warehouse stores like Costco, and those savings can really add up if they're high-volume, regular purchases. But like with buying something twice to get the sale, one has to ask, would I buy this much without the discount? Story 91. So if my 1,500,000 portfolio gained 4 in a year, 60,000 or more, I'm worse off because my 40,000 in annual recurring expenses had a higher 7 inflation, 2,800. People on Reddit like to rattle off this saying, but it's more complex than they make it, depending on your financial picture. Story 92. Interesting, my son has braces and the monthly payment is just the total broken up into however many months, minus the deposit, no interest. So in that case, it made much more sense to pay monthly. But for my daughter's piano, yeah, it's going to cost us a decent amount more because we're paying monthly with 7.9 interest. We put down as much as we comfortably could. Story 93. Gardening saves me a bunch of. I grow my tomatoes hydroponically. There is the upfront cost of the system, but now I spend less than $100 a year, and I get a lot of tomatoes, cucks, and peppers that I cannot buy. It is totally worth it just on volume alone. Once you figure in better taste and nutrition, you are that much more ahead. I just planted some perennials in my dirt garden that should produce year after year for the cost of a couple of handfuls of organic fertilizer a year. Story 94. I base my decision to trade in my car if the annual repair costs exceed an annual car payment. For example, a 500-month payment is $6,000 Wartshire. If my repair, not maintenance, costs exceed $6,000, it is time to get another car. Story 95. One time, I ignored rear brake pads. My music was loud enough that I just didn't hear it. Then my rotors went, took the caliper head with it, had to replace both calipers, rotors, and pads. And my dignity, if we're being honest. Story 96. Found out the Chinese grocer was into pottery after they saw Ghost. Worked out which pottery studio they went to. The Chug and Squeeze on 6th. Paid an exorbitant fee to break lease and move to the apartment above it. Spend years living there hoping to bump into them. Then after 4 years accidentally bump into them on Vinovest Day. Say, oh, you go here? I've never tried before. Would you mind showing me? Even though you've spent the last 3 years going to the Chug and Squeeze on Belmont on Rose Ashtray Day and are very proficient. Wow them with your pottery skills. Ask them out while they're stunned. Have a torrid 3-year affair, which causes a rift between them and their wife, leading to a divorce. You start being an open couple. Then for the 3rd anniversary, you ask them to make some of those lovely little rice bowls they used to stock as it reminds you of how you met. Get the bowls and immediately dump them. Now your plan is complete. But still there's an ember of the relationship that will never truly go away. Been there so many times, I get it, man. Story 97. I knit. I can't tell you how many times I'd be wearing something it made, and someone would say, ooh, I love that. You should knit me one. This cost $400 in yarn and took me 6 months of daily work to finish. Yeah, I'll get right on that. Obviously, I make things for people I love as gifts and stuff, but no, it's never cheaper or easier to make than to buy. Story 98. At least candles make a great gift for holidays, birthdays. The market is flooded with people trying to sell homemade candles, but friends, family members will appreciate a quality homemade candle made by you. Contrary. Story 99. I think the key difference is whether you find value in the process or just want the end result. If you love the process, then it's worth the investment in time and tools, etc. I think a lot of craft supplies get purchased and abandoned because someone saw something cool and figured if that random on Instagram made that cool thing, they surely can too, without realizing just how much time, material, and failed attempts it took to get to that point. But on the other hand, I think the worst that can come of trying a new hobby is learning why artisan-made goods cost so much. Story 100. Similar here. I work in a small town on the highway that just has a couple of overpriced gas stations, but I pass a larger city on my commute that I've seen up to 40 cents cheaper. There have been times that when leaving work, I was super low on gas, and I just bought enough overpriced gas to get me to the cheaper place. Stopping at the cheaper station takes me probably no more than a mile out of my route. Basically, just an exit ramp off the highway and another one back onto the highway. Story 101. The reason that the rich were so rich, Vimes reasoned, was because they managed to spend less money. Take Boots, for example. He earned $38 a month plus allowances. A really good pair of leather boots cost $50. But an affordable pair of boots, which were sort of okay for a season or two and then leaked like hell when the cardboard gave out, cost about $10. Those were the kind of boots Vimes always bought and wore until the soles were so thin that he could tell where he was in Ankh-Morpork on a foggy night by the feel of the cobbles. But the thing was that good boots lasted for years and years. A man who could afford $50 had a pair of boots that'd still be keeping his feet dry in 10 years' time, while the poor man who could only afford cheap boots would have spent $100 on boots in the same time and would still have wet feet. First, Barnes. Story 102. 100. And it's also hard to find a reputable source for researching what is or isn't a quality product. Especially with affiliate marketing being so popular, people will write a glowing review about anything so long as they can add an affiliate link. And anyone and everyone can write reviews, even if they're just a random person who has no real insight into whether it's a good product or not. But a company offered them $5,000 to use their product for a week and then make a video saying, "This is the best product ever." I genuinely have no idea where to get unbiased reviews anymore. Story 103, not totally necessary, but I'll throw socks into that category. Most people will never know the difference, but good socks are a game changer. I have a few pairs of darn tough socks that are about all I wear for work anymore. Story 104, get the prescription from the eye doctor and go online for eyeglasses. There are plenty of options to choose. You take a pic of your face and try on frames you like to see what they will look like. They are easily half-priced or more than through the eye doctor. Story 105. My mom paid for a unit for years that was mostly full of my sister's stuff, most of which could have been replaced fairly cheaply. But part of that stuff was big totes full of rocks. Just rocks my sister liked, nothing special. And milk crates full of old dirty bottles she was hoping would be worth money one day. I think my mom got off light. Story 106. In my experience, I've found older people don't want to part with any of their stuff when they inevitably move into a nursing home or etc. Then when they pass away, the family sells and/or scraps all the junk that was there. I've done it with 2 relatives so far. It keeps them happy knowing they still own all their worldly possessions, despite the fact they'll never touch it again. Story 107. Well, you know the rule. If you haven't worn something for 20 years, you can probably throw it out. Chances are that people empty their storage units when either the person has died, and it's the children doing it, or they are moving out of their home to a retirement village or something and doing the almost end-of-life big clean-out. Story 108. My husband had 2 when we got together around 7-ish years ago. He was a martial arts instructor for YRs, and he's 66 now, so he had a lot of stuff. My house just didn't have the room for everything. He finally got rid of the 1 unit, and a goal this summer is to get rid of the second one. Hopefully. Story 109. I stored a car after I stopped driving for 3 years in San Diego. I was in a bit of denial about losing the ability to drive, and I was homeless for a while and lived in it. Rationalization after the fact FTW. Story 110. We've been on the wait list for one in our building for years, which has made me appreciate if we've been able to get by without having had one up to this point, we're just going to end up accruing additional stuff we don't actually need. Story 111. I rented one many years ago in an apartment I was in. I kept my hockey equipment in there, and it was worth the 50 mo or whatever I paid to not only not have it in my apartment, but a completely different building. I still feel bad for the residents of the building my unit was in, as you could smell it as soon as you walked down the stairs. Story 112. I rented a storage room in my last apartment building because my apartment was a large studio with literally no closets. Unless I wanted my Christmas tree, luggage, etc. visible at all times, I had to pay to put it in the small walk-in closet-sized storage room. So it was worth the 50 month in that sense. But I think that was an outlier situation. And even then, I kind of felt like the building should have given it to me for free, considering mine was the only apartment in the building without any closets. Story 113. It can be used for large seasonal items like snowblowers, lawnmowers, large tents or canopies, snowmobiles, dirt bikes, ATVs, even small boats, but most people winterize them at specialized facilities. The only other time it made sense was when I was working for a home builder. The model houses needed to be furnished for open house, and subdivisions in the same area sometimes had furnished homes selling, while the next ones going up were only bare studs and wiring, so couldn't take the furniture, which is, like you said, moving. Story 114. I had a storage unit that I kept furniture in that I had bought in preparation for moving out of my parents' house. Allowed me to buy over time since I couldn't afford to buy multiple pieces in one purchase. Story 115. My husband passed away and I had to move quickly. I used a storage space to hold our stuff until I got my feet under me and figured stuff out. It was a sudden and unexpected passing, leaving me behind with a baby. I wasn't in the best headspace to go through 10 years of stuff while grieving and caring for our child. Story 116. I moved back into my parents' house to save to buy a house. I went from a 2BR townhouse to a single bedroom. Pretty much everything I owned was in a storage unit for years, including the couch I'm lying on right now. Story 117. I pay all my cards off twice a month. But I think my credit score as their whim of three kings. None of them will tell you what puts you in their favor, but have to be in their favor. There are sages who think they know, and honestly, even with paying everything off consistently, each one declares a number regardless of what I do, and I have to just accept that. Story 118. It's not amusing, dude. It's exploitive. Did you slither out of the womb with this knowledge? Unlikely. So have some compassion for people who are trying to figure it out. I agree that treating a credit card like it's free money is ridiculous because we don't live in a utopia. But those mistakes are what make a lot of people who are otherwise smart start to respect money and seek to be more financially responsible. Story 119. Basically, wait until they send you a statement. The statement period ends to pay it off. And when you do, pay the full statement amount, not just the minimum payment. That way you don't pay any interest because you paid it all off before the due date. But also the credit bureau sees you've been actually using your credit rather than having an empty account sitting there doing nothing, which is what it looks like if you pay it off the day after shopping, instead of waiting for the statement period to end. Story 120. Sounds like you're doing it right. I pay off my credit cards in full before the due date every month, as well as pay my mortgage on time every month, and my credit is near perfect. I can't say for certain, but partial payments probably hurt your credit a little. Story 121. In general, the people who are concerned about making too much money and getting pushed into a higher tax bracket aren't people on Medicare or other benefits. Those people would be concerned with losing benefits that are means-tested, not concerned about their tax bracket. To be clear, the current system setup is garbage. If benefits are means-tested, they should phase out instead of going to zero. Plus lots of other problems with how the current American system works that I won't get into now. Story 122. I've heard of people getting less take-home pay after a raise, but when I've double-checked, either HR is deducting the wrong amounts or the employee struggles to understand numbers greater than 2 digits. Story 123. Got a kid who wants to go to Stanford and legit has a shot? Maybe don't accept that raise. There are a few similar examples, and I don't know if Stanford has fixed this, but you would think a university of that caliber would understand the impact of having a threshold versus graduated economic cutoff. Story 124. Dude, this happened to me. My new dentist said I had like 18 cavities. I was shocked. I have had the occasional 1 or 2 with immediate treatment. I brush and floss, but hadn't been in only like 15 months. It made 0 sense. I said thanks, but no thanks, and immediately got a second opinion. I had 2 and none since. I swear they have a quota or something. Story 125. I had one tell me I had 15 cavities, 4 loose teeth, needed my last wisdom tooth pulled, and had gum disease. I hadn't seen a dentist in 15 years and was horrified. I didn't feel any cavities, I didn't see any cavities, and I had never felt a loose tooth, but she insisted that was what she found. I remember her looking into my mouth and giving the tooth number followed by the word caries to the assistant in this super cheerful voice over and over again. The office printed me an estimate for the work I needed. It was a massive expense, and I spent years believing my teeth were literally rotting out of my head. But I left that job shortly after and never had dental coverage again. I was 30. At 35, I saved enough money to start working with a dental school to try and get my mouth in order. No cavities. No loose teeth, no need to remove the last wisdom tooth, beginning stages of gum disease. But I had, according to the dentist supervising the dental students, clearly brushed my teeth so hard that I had utterly destroyed them and forced plaque deep into the sockets. She said they were some of the most perfectly kept teeth she had ever seen, but I would need surgery they did not offer to replace my gums and serious scraping to get the plaque out. She said she assumed I had brushed that hard in an attempt to save as many teeth as I could, while being uninsured for so long. She was correct, but I did not tell her it was because I had been told my teeth were literally rotting out of my skull by a different dentist 5 years earlier. They were going to cap or pull half my fudge teeth. Jesus. My front lower gums are utterly fudge though. Story 126. This happened to me in reverse. My dentist told me I needed to have my wisdom teeth pulled, but I didn't want to. I've had times where I tried to give him money, for example, braces on 2 occasions for my son, but the dentist told me my son didn't need them. I realized that I trusted him for several other incidents, so I decided to have him pull my wisdom teeth. The braces would have been a big ticket item. The teeth pulling was a small fee, and I was in and out of there inside of 40 minutes. I realized that I should have listened to him before because I not only trusted him, but also recognized him as the expert. Story 127. I filed my wife's LLC by myself since she started the business 8 years ago. It's not hard and is very straightforward, whether using TurboTax, HR Block, or this here Free Tax USA. Hardest part is keeping accounting of what's business versus personal, and then what category the business transaction falls into. If you can manage that part, taxes are easy, and Free Tax USA is the way to go. All tax services give you guidance. Free Tax USA is just free unless you have to file state income. Even then, it's cheap. Story 128. Do it yourself. If you don't have a million transactions, teeny tiny, then you are pretty much ready to throw in all of the numbers, since you have all of your documents together to give your CPA anyways. You can pay a little extra for things like audit protection, ECT, through TurboTax. Best part? No one knows all of your transactions as well as you do. This is the part where you can actually maximize deductions and increase refund list paid in. Story 129. I've neglected this for too long. I have to wear composite toe 6 boots at work. I get $250 a year for boot expenses from work. I think the boots I'm wearing are like 7 years old now. I'm sure they have a few thousand miles on them by now. Story 130. That's how you end up with a house like ours. Whenever we have to fix something, we get a good look at how dodgy the previous owners did things. We've got to laugh at it or we'd be angry. Then my husband wants to fix things himself, and I'm not sure he'd do a better job. Answer. See, I DIY 95 of the things that break around my house. But I also have severe ADHD and a perfectionist syndrome. These combine into me researching something relentlessly for weeks on how to properly do every little detail of a project prior to even stepping foot into it. Honestly, I've had far more issues with the things I paid a pro to do than the stuff I've DIY'd. Surely that isn't always the case, but unless you're doing major things that require a ton of raw knowledge, most stuff can be very easy to DIY if you have the time and monetary support. And generally speaking, nobody's going to care about the fit and finish of your home as much as you will. Many contractors are just trying to get in and out as fast as possible while getting paid. But without question, most DIY stuff seems to be, what's the fastest and cheapest way to fix this issue? Where my brain is always more in the mode of, what's the best balance of efficiency, quality, and price I can use to accomplish this task? The guy who owned our house before us was a DIYer, and my God, some of the things I had to fix in this house were ridiculous. It's a miracle the home didn't burn down prior to us buying it. About 2 weeks into owning the house, was painting one of the bathrooms and removed the outlet cover from the GFCI switch by the sink. Shoot you not, the ends of the wires were just electrical taped together. No wire nut, no Wago, nothing. Just twisted together with some tape, which led to me spending about 3 hours going and taking every single wall plate off to find any other surprises like that. Luckily, there were only 2 more, but I'm still baffled by it. Story 131. Not sure about houses, but I know rent to own furniture, appliances, and wheels are 100 a scam. They usually give a small window where you can pay it off and it'll be same as cash. But these businesses prey on people that they know can't afford it and won't pay it off in that time. So then interest rates start kicking in. Now those people are really in a bind. So then it gets repossessed. Then that same furniture, appliance, or whatever gets used on the next customer. Rinse and repeat. I worked at a rent and roll. It's been a while, but the business practice goes something like that. Story 132. How do they measure octane rating? America uses AKI, which is an average tubulars. This makes it usually a lower number than MON itself, which is higher than ROM. If your country uses the MON number, it will be higher. Story 133. This is an interesting one that I learned after the fact. I paid off all my student loans, 6 interest, and was very proud of myself, but I drained my bank account to near zero. Soon after, I took out a loan to expand my business, which ended up being 15 interest. I was so mad at myself. Beyond that, I could have invested the money to at least negate the 6 interest charge of the student loans, if not make money on investments. Of course, you should pay off credit card debt, but even then, you can get 0 APR introductory rate for a 5 transfer fee deal, and then you're only paying 5 for the year. But pretty much always, it's better to invest money than to pay off a low-interest mortgage. Story 134. It comes back to haunt you in your taxes. It's essentially tax fraud. You'll end up paying taxes on the actual amount you made, obviously. The government isn't as stupid as most think it is. They are checking your actual income against your reported income every year. When they see you've lied for a couple years in a row, they then will blacklist you from enrolling in CSR plans and from getting premium tax credits in advance. You will have to pay full price for a normal plan, and then you can only get any tax credits you actually deserve after the fact when you file your taxes.